with us tonight to meet our panelists. Hopefully you had the opportunity to watch the story of plastic in advance of this discussion. Speaking of technical difficulties, we got word that there were a few people who had trouble watching the documentary today. So we are currently working with the Story of Plastic team to extend the window of time where we can watch the documentary, and we will provide that link in the follow-up notes. However, regardless, I am sure that we are going to learn quite a bit from our guest speakers tonight. So for those of you tuning in that have yet to view the Story of Plastic, it is a documentary that depicts a global plastic crisis beyond anything that most of us have imagined. The plastics industry produces more single-use plastic than ever and is increasing production drastically. Its feedstocks, which are fracked gas and petrochemicals, are stoking climate change. The documentary highlights an industry that promotes false recycling solutions that put an onus on consumers and leave 98% of plastic unrecycled. So the plastic pollution now pervades our ocean and the developing world, and plastics and toxic chemicals that are used to produce it are in our food, our water, our air, soil, and our bodies. And all of this is really overwhelming and deeply upsetting, but the film provides hope in the form of solutions and introduces viewers to unsung heroes that are fighting to stop the mass production of plastic and hold the industry accountable. So we are joined today by some incredibly bright and hardworking people that are going to share their perspectives on the plastic pollution crisis, how they and their teams are addressing the issue, and how we can all get involved. And before I introduce everybody, I just would like to cover a few logistics. So you may have noticed upon entering the room that everybody is on mute. That is just to safeguard our speakers from distracting background noise. However, during the discussion portion of the event, we welcome you to take yourself off of mute to ask a question. Additionally, there is a chat function that everybody should have access to. I believe if you hover your mouse over your Zoom screen on the bottom there, you should see the chat. So we welcome you to submit questions and comments via the chat as well throughout the entirety of the event. And we will be monitoring those throughout the entire event. So hopefully we'll be responsive, or one of the staff members will be responsive. If I am currently speaking, we have a few other society members on that will be looking at the chat as well. We are trying to be mindful of time, so we ask everybody to hold their verbal questions until the end of all panelist presentations. But again, welcome you to submit them in the chat at any time throughout the event. And we, again, are going to do our best to monitor them as they come in. And if you have a specific question for a certain panelist, please be sure to identify who that panelist is if you type a question in the chat, so we can be organized and make sure we're asking it to the correct person. So with all of that covered, let's meet our panelists. Maybe as I introduce you guys, you kind of give a little wave so everybody knows who you are. We will start with Helen Henderson. So Helen is, let me get her slide up, there we go. Helen is the Ocean Program Manager for the American Littoral Society. Her roles over the last 13 years with the society have taken her from legislative policy advocate at the New Jersey State House to the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, where she advocated for more protective land use and regulations and coastal development activities. As Atlantic Coast Program Manager, Helen specialized in improving water quality in Barnegat Bay through better stormwater management practices. She created homeowner and boater programs to protect the bay and secured over $1.5 million in government grants to develop large-scale green infrastructure projects in the Toms River watershed. Her work on reducing non-point source pollution entering our creeks, streams, rivers, and Barnegat Bay entered earned the Society 2 New Jersey Governor's Environmental Excellence Awards. Helen has since transitioned into the Society's ocean policy team, and she will share a little bit more about her work and the Society's history and mission momentarily. Following Helen, we will hear from Angela Anderson. Angela is the Sustainability Coordinator for Long Beach Township. She's a certified recycling professional in New Jersey and the president of the Association of New Jersey Recyclers. She has worked in the environmental field for more than 30 years and has pioneered resilience and sustainability work in her community over the past decade. She has a Bachelor's of Science in Environmental Studies and a Master's in Environment and Community. Following Angela, we will hear from Dr. Allison Fitzgerald. Dr. Fitzgerald is the New York Oyster Program Coordinator with the Restoration Program for the New York, New Jersey Baykeeper, and is an assistant professor at the New Jersey City University. Dr. Fitzgerald has been researching and teaching about invertebrate diversity in the urban estuary for the past 15 years, which includes looking at the effects of major pollutants on the health of ecosystems. New York, New Jersey Baykeeper has been a leader in local microplastics research and outreach for the past 5+ years. And Dr. Fitzgerald received her PhD from CUNY, her Master's of Science from Stony Brook University, and her Bachelor's of Science from the University of Maryland. Following Dr. Fitzgerald, we will hear from Jennifer Coffey. And Jennifer is the Executive Director of the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions. She's served in that role since 2014. And for 10 years prior, she served as the Policy Director for Central New Jersey's first watershed association, which is the Stony Brook Millstone Watershed Association. It's a mouthful. She chaired the Upper Freehold Environmental Commission for 7 years and also served as a member of the Planning Board. Jennifer is a member of the New Jersey State Water Supply Advisory Council and the New Jersey Society of Women Environmental Professionals. She holds a bachelor degree in communications from Stockton University and a dual master's degrees in environmental policy and environmental science from New Jersey Institute of Technology. And Jennifer was recently nominated by New Jersey's Governor Murphy to serve on the Pinelands Commission. And to round out our panel, we will hear from Shane Trimmer. So Shane is a senior policy advisor for the United States Representative Alan Lowenthal, covering policy issues around energy, environment, natural resources, science, technology, as well as elections and voting rights. So quite a large role to serve in right before an election. And before joining the Congressman Alan Lowenthal's office, before joining Congressman Lowenthal's office, Shane worked as a legislative staff, for Representative Jared Huffman, and in the California State Capitol for then Assembly Member Kevin De Leon. Shane is originally from Northern California, and he holds a master's in political management from George Washington University, a master's in public administration from National University, as well as a bachelor's in political science from the University of California at Davis. So I am very much looking forward to hearing from all of these people. So without further ado, I'm happy to hand it over to Helen Henderson to fill us all in on a little bit more about the American Littoral Society, our mission, our history, her role, and how this whole screening came to be. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen because I think you want to share yours.
Hi, Jenna. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Just give me a moment to get set up here. Okay, hopefully you're all seeing my screen share here. Before I get started, again, I'm Helen Henderson, the Ocean Program Manager for the American Littoral Society. And I want to welcome everyone to the Break Free from Plastic movement, or a bit of a revolution, I hope. I'm so thankful to have been able to put this screening event and panel discussion together for the Society. And before I actually start going through my slides, I just want to share for a moment how we got to actually hosting this event. So as Jenna mentioned, I transitioned into the Society's ocean policy team back in 2016. And my work has focused on ensuring a clean and healthy ocean ecosystem. And to that end, much of my work centers on ocean planning in the Mid-Atlantic region, which brings together a wide variety of ocean stakeholders, including federal agencies, local, state, and tribal representatives, coastal communities and businesses, fishermen, ocean industries, and even more to a common table. This regional collaboration and coordination provides a platform for looking at ocean issues such as offshore wind development, sand mining, climate change, and marine debris in a holistic and inclusive manner with all voices being heard. As part of the Society's ocean team, I regularly engage with our Healthy Oceans Coalition activities, AKA the HOC. And in early summer, a coalition email update provided by Jenna arrived in my inbox, and I saw that it offered the opportunity to attend a screening of the story of plastic film hosted by one of the HOC's member organizations. So it seemed to me like a great event during quarantine. I registered, I had a friend over to my back porch, we sat outside and we watched together. I honestly thought that I fully understood and was prepared to watch a movie about the magnitude of our plastic pollution crisis, but I can now tell you that I was not prepared for how heavily the film would impact me. As I hope many of you agree, the film really tells the story of our plastic pollution crisis in the most compelling way, and it made me want to fight even harder to protect our environment, our ocean, and our human lives from this terrible fossil fuel monster that is hurting us in so many ways, including climate change and a huge floating garbage patches in our ocean all around the world. And I just wanted to share with all of you that I personally am especially mad when I think about the consumer focus that has been sold to us for so long and pervaded our thinking, really distracting from getting at the true source of the problem and to real solutions. I'm heartbroken when I see so many countries and people being exploited, but, and I think this is the upside to things, I'm really energized and now I'm ready to fight for accountability. So with that fire that was ignited after seeing the film, I worked with my team. I called upon some of my environmental colleagues from organizations I highly respect and work with in the plastic pollution fight. They are some of my professional heroes. So I was able to bring us all here this evening, and I really felt that if the story of plastic film could affect me in such a way, that it surely would others as well. And so I'm very grateful to share this evening with you. Thank you to all the panelists that you're going to hear from, and thank you to all, for all joining us. So with that, I would like to begin going through a few quick slides for you. So for those of you that aren't familiar with us, the American Littoral Society promotes the study and conservation of marine life and habitat, protects the coast from harm, and empowers others to do the same. Sorry, Jenna, my screen sharing has frozen.
We can still see your opening slide and hear you.
Okay, let me see if I can get it to advance. Okay, it did for me. Did you get it that time?
Perfect, yes.
Oh, great.
success?
So while we worked geographically in many different special locations in many different ways, including Jamaica Bay, Barnegat Bay, Delaware Bay, and of course in our big blue ocean, there are several initiatives that involve plastic pollution that I'd like to highlight this evening. So I will quickly cover several of our marine debris prevention, education, and advocacy initiatives in New York and New Jersey. And they include the Jamaica Bay, New York Fishing Line Recycling Program, the New York State Beach Cleanup, balloon litter education, reduction, and prevention, and zero waste workshops for a sustainable lifestyle. So fishing line recycling, monofilament is a single strand of material that is made of strong, flexible plastic that is clear or tinted many colors and is one of the most popular types of fishing line used today. It can be very harmful in our marine environment, not only as plastic pollution, but because of the harm it can inflict on marine life. If it is to be recycled, monofilament requires a specialized program such as this one. The Society maintains 30 fishing line receptacles around Jamaica Bay, New York, and is expanding the program in Brooklyn and Queens currently. In 2018 to 19, we collected and recycled over 50,000 yards of fishing line and kept thousands more yards of braided line out of the water. As you can see, the New York State beach cleanup, we have organized this for more than 30 years. And here's a little bit of statistics from 2019. We had over 8,900 volunteers in 23 counties who removed almost 63,000 pounds of debris from 24 miles of shoreline. They removed and recorded more than 1,757,000 items, and over 1.5 million of those pieces contained plastic. You can look at the graphic here and see the top dozen items that we removed in 2019. So balloon litter, what goes up will come down. From joyful celebrations to somber occasions, intentional balloon releases, from mylar to latex to the ribbons attached to them, have a very large impact on our marine environment. As part of our work on regional ocean planning, we engaged with the Mid-Atlantic Regional Council on the Ocean, also known as MARCO, which is a regional ocean partnership of the 5 states of New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia. We joined their marine debris work group, focused on reducing balloon litter by reaching audiences to foster behavior changes by way of social marketing. We also assisted the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection as part of that work by routinely cleaning and cataloging pollution along a mile of Island Beach State Park for 2 years. And most recently, as a result of our MARCO work, we joined with partners on a new website to offer inspirational litter-free ideas to celebrate and to remember and honor people or events. You can certainly visit preventballoonlitter.org to learn more. And last but not least, we work with municipalities in New Jersey, New York, and Delaware through our Champions of the Coast initiative to adopt like-minded resolutions and ordinances to protect our coast and ocean, such as banning intentional balloon releases. There have been many successes, and to date, over 30 municipalities and counties in New York and New Jersey have banned balloon releases. And this work is really important and has an impact on reducing plastic pollution regionally. And lastly, I wanted to let everyone know about an upcoming, oh, we're already on that slide, opportunity on September 16th at 6 o'clock. Our education program director, Nicole Haynes, will bring you facts and tips to get you on your way to zero waste. She will talk about how to live a more sustainable lifestyle by reducing your plastic use and overall waste. She discusses pollution facts, easy switches, microfibers, fast fashion, and more. So sadly, I'm sure this slide contains photos of what we all see too often during this difficult time. Please join us in reminding others, as you can, to properly dispose of their gloves, masks, or other PPE items. And please, everyone, stay safe. Thank you very much for this opportunity to share this film with you and the rest of our amazing panelists. And should you wish to join us, please visit our website. You can always email me or info@littoralsociety.org to find out more, or if you have any questions post this event. We will be following up with our partners and sending you an email to let you know how you can take more actions.
Great, thank you so much, Helen. If anybody has questions, I see some conversation going on in the chat, which is awesome. And yes, that's great advice about if you're disposing your masks, how to do that properly. So thank you for that. We'll just keep moving right along, but if you have a question for Helen or me or anybody else on the call, I know Nicole is actually on this meeting, so if you have questions about the zero waste workshop, I'm sure that she would be happy to discuss that in the chat as well. Yeah, so you see her, she just popped on right there. Hi, Nicole. So we will keep it moving right along, and Angela, I will hand it over to you.
Okay. Let's see how I do. Let me just share my screen. All right. All right. So am I up there?
Yep. Looks great.
Okay. Let me, all right. So I don't, here I am. Okay. All right. So, you can hear me well? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. To me, you're a little bit faint.
Okay.
So I don't know, maybe if you get a little closer to your computer.
Yep. No problem.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. I want to thank you, Helen, and everyone at the American Littoral Society for inviting me to participate in this conversation. This is a pretty powerful film, a very powerful topic, and it's really, really important to have these kind of conversations. I first watched the film when it first came out in April, and I just found it amazing how differently it has struck me, given what the last few months of all of our lives have been. And I feel like we're all very, very ripe for the meaning and the magnitude of this film in this discussion. I was excited to watch the film originally. I met Steve Wilson, one of the producers, in October 2012 when they were doing their last straw bike tour up the coast, and we had them here on LBI. And a week later, Sandy came to town, and a lot of our priorities here shifted to more resiliency work, and but we were really ready to strike here in township. So this is, everything just has its time and runs its course. So let me just see here how I advance my screen. Okay. So where am I? I know everybody on the call is in a different location, so I just wanted to give you a sense of who I am and where I'm coming from on my perspective on this piece of the conversation. I'm in Long Beach Township on Long Beach Island in the southern part of New Jersey. We're an 18-mile long island off of the coast of South Jersey, and we are 18 miles, and Long Beach Township is one of 6 towns on our island. We're 12 non-committal of our 18-mile long island. So that has posed a lot of challenges as far as planning and things like that. So I've been with Long Beach Township. I live here. My husband grew up here, And I get to live and work here in our little piece of paradise here on our sandbar. So we really see some of these effects very, very blaringly of plastics. But I work for the municipality here for about 10 years. So we have really tried over 10 years. It's very, we've done a lot of things in the 10 years that I've been here. And the angle we come from in these bigger, headier global issues is really from a community pride perspective and the way that we want to present our community to people that live here and visit here. So, we've been part of Sustainable Jersey since its inception in 2009. And it is really a great roadmap for municipalities. It's evolved with times, and that priority action items are sometimes difficult to achieve, but it's a really good roadmap. They've very well thought out subcommittees getting action items together for towns. So that has been a guiding light for us since the very, very beginning. We registered in 2009 and then certified in 2013 or something like that, I forget. One of our early initiatives, again, coming from community pride, plastic-free lifestyles, what are things towns can be doing, beyond, just educating? So we installed water filling stations in public places to reduce the use of, single-use plastic bottles. We did this back in 2014, and we're up to 10 installations now. And each time we acquire a new property, we add these water refilling stations. And when I use this as a outreach tool to the community, I engage them. I don't like to stand at a fair and just hand things to people. I make people earn it. I make them learn how to kayak with me first before they're going to get a reusable water bottle to walk over and understand that. And I've had, people come up to me and still have their water bottle they got from me 10 years ago kayaking. So I want it to mean something when we do these things. And we, incorporating this into a narrative that engages people is very important to me. We've been recognized by, for the Governor's Environmental Excellence Award for Healthy and Sustainable Community. And we really joke about that because, again, here we're on this island with 6 other towns. So we're always said, don't go too far out of Long Beach Township because you're not going to be healthy or sustainable anymore if you pop over into Ship Bottom or Beach Haven, But we try to set this precedent for, we want everybody on Long Beach Island, we want everybody to take pride in this, that we earned this recognition. Mayor Mancini, early on, in 2016, he had started it. By 2017, we passed our intentional balloon release ban, and other towns on the island followed suit with us. Very shortly after that, we did our single-use carry-out bag ban instituted in 2017. And through our water and sewer bills, we provided each household with 2 reusable bag vouchers that they could come in and get a Long Beach Township reusable bag with a voucher to engage in that. So that was a really well-received program as a way of engaging with people. And we developed a very good relationship with all of the restaurants and our businesses where they started voluntarily doing other things in addition to not using the single-use carry-out bags. They voluntarily said, hey, we're not going to use the styrofoam and the plastic straw. Because once you have community pride and you want to live like this, you don't need an ordinance or a law to tell you, this is what you got to do. You just got to do the right thing. So these are just some of the highlights of some of the things that we've done along these lines to engage people, in the things that we're doing here. So the recycling in New Jersey, it's always a joke, of course, with the Sopranos and all that. And it's a very Jersey thing. There's a long history of how this came to be and where we are at today. So it's a real, very easy kind of path just to look at some of the things that we've done, from very simple things of just data collection, voluntary tonnage reporting, things like that. But it was activists, government, legislators all coming together to say, how are we going to shape this in New Jersey? How to be doing bottle bills or whatever it was. We had to follow the path in Jersey, but you really saw people looking, say, what's going to work in Jersey, and separating out material that could be marketed, to me, has always been the key that we've did a lot of missteps on some of these original intentions of how we've got to where we are today. So kind of a little bit fast forward to the mandatory recycling in 1987, it's the Source Separation and Recycling Act. And I think that's important. Source separation. And some of the guidelines that were originally written in 1987 in New Jersey, empowering counties to, do their, own plans, get their collection, their marketing, and their disposal, but also how they're going to market that material at the end of the day and utilize that. We set some pretty loose guidelines early on, 25%, and then we amended it, to 50%. New Jersey towns average of recycling is about 30-35%, depending on where you are. So it's 50% is achievable, but not everybody's able to do that. And it's also the way that it's structured that confuses people to make it worse. But the Recycling Act provided a provision for recycling market development studies. It was written in the original piece of legislation. And at that time, we really had opportunities in New Jersey for really good end markets. We were bottling a lot. We had Snapple, we had Ocean Spray, we had Anheuser-Busch. The markets and the opportunities were there, but China just, but China. So they really, they came in, they wanted, we didn't make the right decisions. It's led us to where we are right now. But I think if we just go back to the original intentions of source separation and some of those intents of market development studies, that's where we see it. And again, at my level at the Association of New Jersey Recyclers, this is something that we really want to key in on. So each of the 21 towns in New Jersey, or the counties, they created their own solid waste program with at least 3 mandated, and each county is different because each county had to determine how they're going to process, how they're going to collect, how they're going to market. So in there really wasn't much state oversight other than here's the materials that you have to do. So this began a lot of confusion, and we started to lose sight of some of the really important pieces in market development. So one of the things that gets confusing is just simple container sizes. We know, everyone just feels good, like the blue bin, I'm doing it. Whatever matters magically, which we know not. People feel good. The blue bin, boom, I put it in, I feel really good about it. It gets confusing to people because the blue bin on the left, the regular one, people are used to just like seeing that. The garbage guy sees it and he can say, hey, I'm not taking that because there's the wrong material in there. These automated ones, nobody sees it till it goes onto the tipping floor. And everybody's like, well, they take everything. So, well, they don't take everything. They took everything because they have an automated machine. So these different individual styles of each county have led to some problems on how people perceive what can be taken and what can not be taken and what's acceptable. So these are problems that we live with every day, but one of the contributing factors is the bins that happen. We figure it's nice and simple, right? People call, say, can I recycle this? And, I'm like, I don't know, do you have the calendar in front of you? Yeah, all right, well, let's read it together. It's very specific. Here's Ocean County's rules. Every town and county has these rules. People just can't accept that because maybe they're coming from a different county or a different state, and they say, well, my town takes this, why don't you guys? I said, well, it's because we have different machinery and we have different end markets where we can try to move material out of. It's very difficult. Just even a town over on the mainland across the bridge from me, they'll have an automated bin versus the packer trucks. So very clearly written out with pictures and everything, and still it's very difficult for around stuff that they think needs to be going into these bins. But it didn't matter for so long because China was just taking everything. So we got sloppy and we got lazy. And now people are like, well, I've always thrown that in there. We've always taken it. And it's like, well, now more than ever, it really matters what we're going to separate out and what we're going to try to maximize these materials. Because after 30 some years of mandatory recycling, there's still so much stuff. And of course, we see one of the biggest things there is the food waste that's still going into, and regardless of the, where we're at, there's still just way too much of everything going into the landfill So we need to improve. We know this, and a film like The Story of Plastic just keeps really reaffirming, and we need to do better. We've got ourselves in a pretty tough spot right now. We're totally and completely seduced by the recycling symbol. People see a recycling symbol on something, that means it has to be recycled. You can't tell people anything different than that. They need to take the little flying triangles around away from these numbers, because they are not for the consumer. And this really leads to a lot of problems in contaminated baling and people just throwing anything with a recycling symbol into the bin. And it's, I can't convince people of it. Every day I give a million talks. It's not, you're not going to convince people of it. People want to believe that their stuff's going to become something else, right? As we see in the film, devastatingly low percentage of anything actually becomes, what did they say, maybe 2% is really efficiently recycled. And like me, has been doing this stuff for a long time. I like to inspire people. I like people to feel good about what their habits are and what they're buying and what they're putting away. You know, we want to make recycling convenient for people because we want them to feel good about what they're doing and not have them be devastated by what some of these realities are. So I try to always stick with the hopefulness despite where we are in the world right now. But this was one of my favorite parts of this, is I got to meet Gary Anderson at the 25th anniversary of the recycling down at Stockton. The recycling symbol was born from an art contest winner by a college student, Gary Anderson, no relation to me. He's 23 years old, and he entered a design competition held by the Container Corporation of America to create a symbol for recycled paper. He wasn't a graphic designer. He was an engineering student. He won about $2,000, and he was psyched. 1970, college student. He was like, awesome. Sounds good. You know, it went into the public domain. He didn't have any rights to it, and the rest is history. It's now just, it's a play on the Mobius strip that he did when he was designing it. And now it is one of the most recognized symbols, but it's the most misused and something that leads to so much confusion in our industry here. So I just always love this little side piece of it. He's such a nice guy. And he's like, you know, what are you gonna do? You win some, you lose some. But I find it to be one of the more interesting people we're trying to solve here with what recycling is supposed to mean and what it could be. I always try to give a little bit of a love story in plastic, because it is a miraculous material. As we know, anybody that's on the call or has seen the film, we have seriously just, been, snowed over by industry and overconsumption of it. But the magic of it, it has probably saved lives of so many in our families and loved ones and circles of life, that if we had a deeper love and appreciation for the magic of what the science of that is, maybe there's an angle to reach a certain audience that they wouldn't be so wasteful and disregarding of something that is kind of magical substance if you come from a science perspective of it. Hard sell, because everyone wants to demonize it, and I get it. But sometimes there's going to be different audiences that maybe we can grab them to give a greater appreciation of that, what they are. So strategies and solutions. I'm a solutions oriented person. We've had the recycling source separation recycling law for 33 years or so now. The Association of New Jersey Recyclers has decided that we really need to take a leadership role in the market development side of it. Even though the Recycling Act originally provided a provision for the funds for market development studies, it hasn't come to fruition yet. I think it was sort of named, but nothing's, so we did it and we're doing it. We started it in January. A fantastic group of colleagues and leaders in the industry really thinking about what this means and how to break it down into consumable and really doable parts. Like, we have an opportunity right now. Thank you, China, for shutting the door on us, because now we have to what our choices are on the material that we have, and we have opportunity for infrastructure in this country and in New Jersey, and we need to make that happen. And these are first steps. Despite COVID being what it is, it's nice to see this market development committee blossom through these last few months. And then in April, we got to see, after you know, about a 4-year legislative discussion, the Food Waste Recycling Act get passed. This is great. This is showing you like, okay, we need to separate these materials out. We need to separate them out and get them to be, you know, marketed out of a landfill and all that kind of stuff. When we talk about food waste too, I want everyone to know, just like recycle is the last thing we want you to, food waste recycling is truly, we want to feed people first. There's a lot of food that goes to waste and we have far too many hungry people. Prioritization of where the food lands is our job. And, you know, we want to see people fed. We want to see industry being generated in our state that's going to accept material that we have excess of that can't be fed to people. So we're making strides. These are successes. These are steps in a really good direction that we're taking collectively in New Jersey. Recycled content was introduced June 4th. We're, you know, again, these are things that we really want to see. We need to have an end market created. We need these materials to be utilized to create other products, if that's where we're going to land with this stuff, before we do the reduce and the reuse, which are the things we really need to be focusing on right now. Recycling is last purposely. It's purposely listed last in the R's. A lot of fun forward-thinking solutions for plastic-free living. We Pre-Cycle, a new shop up in New York. All food, no packaging is their motto. We have a brand new company or little store that opened right here on LBI, Root, which is a refill cafe. We're really putting themselves out there during this COVID, and they're really doing a good job. People are paying close to the bring into their lives and their families and where it goes. And these refill cafes, the Repair Cafe is something that we're going to be expanding on down here. It's a kind of a global initiative. You can go to repaircafe.org, and we have about maybe 5 of them in existence right now. You know, care for the things that we have, repair them, and do that. A lot of the zero waste incentives, like that, I'm excited to go on the one that Littoral Society will be hosting in September. Closed loop partnerships. There's economies that we're building here. And that's what's so exciting about something seemingly so like, oh, you got to recycle this. This conversation, the industry that I've been blessed to work in for so long, is a global economic engine and discussion. And when we can shift people, we want them to feel inspired by it. The 3 R's are in that order. You want to reduce your consumption, reuse what you can, repair, and we can fill in a whole bunch of R's before we ever even get to recycle. Industries and producer responsibility are the key. We have got to start on the front end. We cannot keep carrying the burden as consumers and taxpayers and as municipal coordinators. And this is what's so great about this conversation is we have opportunity and hope right before us right now. So that's just a little piece of where I stand on a lot of this stuff. And this is my contact information. And I look forward to continued conversations with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Angela. And thank you for all of the great work that you and your colleagues are doing. We really appreciate it, and for sharing with us. It was great. And again, if anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat box and we will monitor them. And keeping an eye on time, I'm going to keep it rolling and hand it over to Dr. Fitzgerald.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so like Jenna said, my name's Allison Fitzgerald, and I work for New York, New Jersey Baykeeper. We're a local nonprofit that is dedicated to restoration and preservation in the Hudson River and estuary. I'm going to kind of flip gears here, and we're going to talk science. You know, it's great that we have all of these advocacy and legislative bills and outreach to stop plastic pollution, but they need to be fueled by scientific research and scientific design. We need numbers to throw at all these legislators to say, this is why you need to stop. And so I'm going to talk to you about some research that my lab and New York, New Jersey Baykeeper have done in the estuary in the past couple of years. So We all know plastic's the never-ending material. It's not going away. The problem is that it breaks down in the environment. And salt water and sunshine are two of the worst things for plastic because it causes it to crack and fragment. You can see in that top picture, it's ingested by a lot of animals, birds, sea turtles, mammals are big ones. You've probably seen all the pictures of whales that come up beached or turtles that are tangled in nets. But what I'm really concerned with are the microplastics, the smaller pieces. The smaller and smaller this marine debris gets, the easier it is to get into the food chain and change the ecology of our area. And of course, this talk would not be complete without mentioning our newest problem, which is all the plastic from this COVID-related materials. So remember to cut your straps. Microplastics and marine debris can get into the environment from a lot of different avenues. In our area, in the New Jersey, New York area, it's mostly through either direct dumping, runoff from streets. So like litter that's in the street during a strong storm can either run directly into the estuary or into a sewer drain. And then CSOs, combined sewer overflows. This is when in older cities, you have all of your drains leading to the same place. So all of your toilet and your sink and your washing machine, plus all the street drains all go to one place. And when it rains a lot, it overwhelms the water treatment facility and the plastics can go in. The smaller the plastic is, the less likely it's going to get caught by the wastewater treatment facility, such as microfibers from your polyester clothing, and it's going to get into the water. Okay. Microplastics can be either what we call primary, which means they were small to begin with, or secondary, which means they were large and they broke down into small. It's hard to regulate these, especially the really small ones, because we don't have the technology yet in the wastewater treatment plants to stop them from going in, and it's harder to pass legislation for this. You've probably heard a lot about ban the bag or ban the straw, stop all these things, but you probably haven't heard about ban the nurdles or the small plastic fragments from that bottle you threw in there. So it just hasn't been out there yet. The picture on the bottom I have there shows you kind of some of the things that could happen to plastic when it gets in. Macroplastics, which is big, or you might have heard marine debris, your bags, your rings, your spoons, any other plastic is going to degrade to smaller particles. The smaller ones can not only get into the food chain, but they can also absorb any toxins that are in the water. A lot of new research is showing that bacteria and viruses can adhere to plastic, and that other contaminants like metals or mercury, cadmium, anything like that, any organic can adhere to the plastic. So you're just kind of putting an extra topping on this already polluted plastic piece and putting it into an organism. The higher order consumers, your bigger animals, are going to get affected, but it's also the smaller animals, the little krill and crustaceans that fish are eating. They're getting sick, so there's less food for the fish, which means the fish have less food for the mammals, and it travels up the food chain. Everything's going to kind of ripple out. This is a map here showing you samples that were taken worldwide. This is from a group called the Adventure Scientists. One of the most amazing things about plastic research is that most of it's done by citizen scientists. And we at Baykeeper have our own citizen science program, so we're huge advocates of this. I know Littoral Society has a great program as well. In this Adventure Scientists, this was run from 2013 to 17, and they had over 2,600 samples that got sent into this group. And in all of them, there was plastic, right? You can see here, there's very few samples that are like, almost all of them, I should say. There's a few in the middle of the oceans where there's yellow, which was no sample, but most of the ones along the currents and especially along the edges of the shoreline have plastic in them. So you might ask why we would care about this. You know, we all talk about reduce, reuse, maybe recycle, maybe not. And we talk a lot about, you know, alternatives, but I want to show you what happens when that plastic gets in the water. It's going to go into an animal, especially filter feeders. In the Hudson River Estuary, we have millions and millions of clams, mussels, oysters, scallops. Okay, these are all really important because they form the base of the food chain. You can see in that top picture that they're really good at cleaning the water. They suck in the water, they pull out particles that are in it, hopefully they're food and algae, and they clean the water that way. You might have heard about oyster restoration in the Hudson River estuary. It's been a big movement for the last few years. And the reason is because it helps clean the water. But what they're doing is, along with all the food in the water that they're pulling out, they're also pulling out microplastics. And this picture on the bottom middle is showing you some microfibers that we found inside an oyster from the Bronx River. So we took these oysters and we digested them in the lab, and we found plastics inside their tissues. If that was an oyster that you were eating, if it was something for aquaculture, that would then go into you. So you have to be really careful about the food part of marine biology. So anything that you would eat for food, fish or shellfish, aquaculture, is going to have plastics in it, and then this is going to get into the human system. There is still a lot of research needed for microplastics so that we can more adequately help to reduce the amount of plastics in the water. We need to know, where are the plastics? Where around the estuary are they? Where are they coming from? Are they mostly close to shore, far offshore? How are they getting to these waters? Is it from street runoff? Is it from your washing machine? What types of plastic, in both how big are the plastics, what shape are they, but also what polymer of plastic are they? How do they affect the organisms? Do they change their feeding rate? Do they change how often they reproduce? Are they not getting as big because of this plastics? That's going to change the ecology in the estuary, their relationship with each other. It could actually transmit up the food chain. We talk about ecotoxicology, the pollutants in these organisms. Like I said, the good news is there's a lot of people out there working on this. This picture is from the Hackensack Riverkeeper. We assisted them last summer doing a litter survey on the streets around the Hackensack River. And we would categorize all the plastics we saw on the street, and then we compared them to what we saw in the water. We do a lot of sciencey stuff when we go out in the water, but it's pretty easy. We use this like really large net called a Manta Trawl. You can see it in that bottom right picture. They call it a Manta Trawl because it has these wings that float on top of the water. But what we're doing is we're just taking a large volume of water and sieving out the plastics. You can see when in the center pictures there, when we capture the plastics, it has a lot of organic material too, twigs and things like that. So we pull out the big ones. We have the plastics then in the jar, and then in the lab, we'll go out and digest them with these chemicals called a Fenton reaction, which will take away the organics. What all of that does is it concentrates the plastics that are floating in the water into a small sample size that I can take to my lab, and then I can put under the microscope and see what types they are. One of the studies that Baykeeper did in 2016, which was one of the first big studies that was done in the Hudson River, is they went around to all the red dots on that map and did this trawl and found plastics in all of these places. We then followed it up by going up the Raritan River the next year for another survey, and again, found plastic in all of her samples. In the Hudson River estuary, and also just worldwide, we know a lot about plastic pollution. We know the types of plastic that we see. In our area, we see lots of styrofoam pieces, and then we also see fragments, hard fragments, probably from broken bottle caps or softer fragments that are from pieces of like chip bags or labels from soda bottles, things like that. Size-wise, we are finding them both in the microplastics and the macroplastic or marine debris sizes. You can see here on the bottom two graphs, they basically show the same thing. It's the type of plastic we found. The left side is in the Hackensack River in a small creek, and the right side is in that large Hudson River estuary study that Baykeeper did. What this is showing us is these small little microplastic styrofoam balls that we're finding in the water samples. They're probably coming from land runoff or from our CSOs, but they're very small, and that's why they're getting into the water more easily. When we did a study the next year, we actually trawled for plankton. So we weren't even trying to find plastics. We were looking at the organisms that live in the water, and we found all this plastic that's in there with the algae. So these are some microscope pictures of the plastics, and you can see here some more graphs looking at, again, the Hackensack River on top and the Bronx River on the bottom. None of these graphs had 0 on them, right? It doesn't matter if you understand them or not. You could see that there's colors there. Nothing had 0 because we found plastic in all of our samples. Okay. So what this is showing us is this type of research is really important for when you want to take a bill to the legislature or you want to talk about research in the classroom to show that we have this data to get the next generation interested in these bans and this work. You know, take it, New Jersey just passed all this climate education stuff for K through 12. And this is part of that. Reducing plastic and keeping our planet clean is part of that climate reality. So just wrapping it up with a simple, what can you do? And I'm sure everybody's kind of have this slide. This is gonna kind of be, sorry, that's my notes. One of the things that you can do, of course, is taking simple swaps to reduce your plastic. You know, most people tend to hear about the big things in the media. You see the picture of the turtle with the straw coming out of its nose, or you see the picture of the whale with the net in its blowhole. You might not see a picture of a copepod that's ingesting a microbead, but I've seen them. And I know that those little ones are gonna go up the food chain to those big animals that you're gonna see. So the more simple swaps we can make to reduce even just a little bit of our plastic use is gonna be big. Every little bit helps. Join an advocacy campaign, volunteer in a citizen science project. I know that Helen mentioned the ALS Plastic Zero Waste Workshop that's coming up. Baykeeper often offers citizen science projects that look at microplastics, and we just became a partner with Stop and Shop, and if you buy a reusable grocery bag from them, they will donate $1 to Baykeeper and their efforts for cleaning up the estuary. So I hope that I gave you a little taste of the science, and if you have any questions, you can type it in the chat box. I'm happy to answer, and I could type my email in there too. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That presentation was just so interesting and, you know, kind of scary too, but all of this stuff is so important to hear about, you know, so we can figure out how we stop that at the source. That kind of reminded me of the film when they're pulling all of the nurdles out of the bank. It's just so scary to think about that this problem just spans across, you know, the whole globe, but even size-wise, it's everywhere. And the research that you're doing is so necessary and vital for the work that a lot of the advocacy groups are doing, like you said, so that we can go in and meet with our members of Congress and demonstrate this. I see that there are a couple of questions for you, and I've noted them for the discussion portion, but we'll keep going just to make sure that all of our presenters have a moment to speak, and then we'll circle back around to those questions. And if you put your email in the chat box, that would be great too, because I feel like people will probably want to follow up with you. And next we have Jennifer Coffey.
Great, thank you. Do I have the ability to share my screen?
I believe so.
You should.
Okay, let's see, hold on.
It should be right down at the
Yep,
bottom.
yep, I've got it. Give me 1 second here. All right, so you're all seeing that?
Yes.
Great. Wonderful, so this is the portion of the presentation where I would ask for a show of hands, and I guess for those of you who know how to work the reactions, I can ask, you know, are we feeling sufficiently depressed now? Are we feeling sufficiently anxious about this? Well, the good news is that this is a human-made problem, and so humans can fix this solution. And I want to talk a little bit specifically about some science-based legislation that we're working on in New Jersey. So thank you for the previous presentations, and I agree that that film was incredibly impactful, and if I could get all of the New Jersey legislature to watch it, then I think our job would probably be a lot easier here. But alas, they have not and probably won't. So I know that there are people who have registered for this from around the country. So I'll ask you to bear with me while I speak for just a few moments about New Jersey proposed legislation and what we're working on. And hopefully you'll feel inspired knowing that what we are working on in New Jersey is the strongest set of regulations regarding plastic bans and plastic use reduction in the entire nation. So if we're able to do this, then that really raises the bar for a lot of other states to kind of walk down that same path. So this has been a multi-year effort with dozens and dozens and dozens, if not hundreds and thousands of partners really call to action on plastic. So as the executive director of ANJAC, the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions, I have the great privilege of working with local government. And in New Jersey, we have 565 unique municipalities. And each of them likes to do things their own way, and they have their own sets of rules and regulations. That can be daunting, or it can be empowering, depending on what the issue is and how you approach it. And I'll talk about that in just a minute, so that's a little teaser for you. We have built up significant public concern in New Jersey, of course, building on the heels of that iconic National Geographic cover photo. I'm sure you all know the one that I'm talking about. It's a plastic bag that's meant to look like an iceberg or an ice shelf. The enormous amount of press attention that's been given to this issue, and really the call to action from dozens and dozens and dozens of citizen and environmental groups. So in New Jersey, we have a pretty strong piece of legislation, and it passed the Senate in our previous session. That was 2019. Unfortunately, the Assembly did not see fit to take it up. It was quagmired significantly with politics, and the bill has opposition from the oil and gas industry. As you could imagine, New Jersey is an important state to the oil and gas industry. And I have testified at the very same table with oil and gas industry advocates who have said things like, they need single-use plastics in order to make fracking economically viable for them. I was less impressed than some people were with that statement and called them on it, because their reaction was, well, if we're not allowed to produce single-use plastics, then we'll simply have to let this byproduct of fracking out into the air, and then we'll have more polluted air to breathe. And I said, or we could just stop fracking, because technically we don't need it. If we allowed renewable energy to move forward without the restrictions that we have placed upon it, and without the dearth of funding that we give to nuclear and other sets of energy that we're not necessarily giving to renewable, then we'd have a competitive framework. But that's why it was partially at least quagmired in the Senate last term. So we built up some additional steam, and the Senate is really behind this in New Jersey. The new bill number is S864. That's the number we really want to pay attention to, is 864. A is the Assembly Bill version 1978. That needs some serious upgrading and revisions. Again, we're quagmired in the Assembly at this point in time. So the big red letters down the bottom of your screen may have given away the punchline here of what I want to ask all of my New Jersey folks here to consider calling, at a minimum, calling or emailing Assembly Speaker Coughlin and asking him to move forward with S864. He needs some pressure from constituents. Let me walk through the bill and tell you what it would do in New Jersey. And again, we think this is the strongest in the nation. It would ban all plastic bags, with very few exceptions for sanitary reasons. There was a call to allow some plastic bags to pack your meat in that you would get from the butcher's counter. And so we said, fine, we're not going to fight you on that. But it would effectively ban all single-use plastic bags for all stores. It would also ban all polystyrene foam food service products. And so we think that that would go a long way into getting the manufacturer's attention in terms of what they are asking us to carry our products in, and for them to pay a little bit more attention and put some more thought into that process. We also talked about straws, and we mentioned straws earlier with that horrific video of the poor turtle, which gets me every time. Straws would move to upon request only in New Jersey. You could provide paper, but plastic straws upon request only. So they would not be given out with every glass of water, every cocktail, et cetera. And that was done in response to concerns from the disabilities community to be able to have some access to those straws. So that was a compromise that we made. If your store size is above 2,500 square feet, no more paper bags. So the bill in New Jersey would effectively be a ban on paper, a ban on plastic, a ban on polystyrene food containers. If you're under 2,500 square feet, so you think about your corner bodegas or corner stores, you could still use a paper bag and that would be free. We got into a lot of issues with fees, 10-cent fee, 25-cent fee, other states have taken up fees, and it got really complicated really fast. And it became clear once Senator Smith, the chair of our Senate Environment Committee, went and visited some islands, that you can live without paper or plastic bags, and you just bring your own or you carry it out yourself. And he was just, it was like a brand new world for him. And so he's been championing banning paper, banning plastic for quite some time now. You can see the time frame that's laid out in there in terms of effectuating the different provisions in the bill. And so this is really what we're putting a lot of our efforts into now, and working with a large coalition of groups, American Littoral Society included, and many, many other environmental groups, to get this bill passed and to try to have this passed this October. I had sent Speaker Coughlin's word that he was going to pass this before June, but that was when we met in what some of my staff call the before times, before the pandemic broke out. So everything got waylaid a bit there. Speaking about regulations and using science to make good policy, I also wanted to note that we have seen some resistance to local regulations that have gone into place. I'm going to skip around on my slides here for a second. I want to talk about the local ordinances that are in effect. We have more than 99, we're over 100 at this point in time, of local ordinances. So remember, there's 565 municipalities in New Jersey, each of which likes to do things their own way, have adopted ordinances banning plastic bags, banning polystyrene, and Helen has been a tremendous champion for banning the intentional release of balloons. And so a number of municipalities have adopted bans on that. When the pandemic hit, we saw a lot of pushback on reusable bags. And I'm sure some of you have encountered some stores that would not allow you to bring your reusable bag in. That was an industry effort. And there were industry-backed lobbyists who sent letters to every municipality in New Jersey saying that because of COVID, we need to use single-use bags now to be safe, and asking them to suspend their ordinances that they already had adopted and had in place. And a few towns did that. We responded by sending a letter in kind to every municipality after doing some research with a panel of doctors and talking about what the safest option is during the pandemic. And what we came up with, the recommendations we received, was to bring your own bag, pack your own bag, take your own bag home, wash your own bag, rather than dealing with a single use who you don't know who's touched it, you don't know where it's been. We now know a little bit more about this virus, and we know that it really transmits through respiratory droplets. So there's less concern, but there still is pushback. I want to share, there was a great case a great decision that came out of New York just yesterday, where the same industry advocates that sent letters to every town in New Jersey asking them to back off of their ordinances here, took New York to court over their plastic bag ban and said, because of COVID, we need to use single-use plastic bags. And the case was dismissed just yesterday, saying that that does not follow the leading science, and upheld New York's plastic bag ban. So that was a tremendous win legislatively. This is really a grassroots effort. This is environmental commissions, this is concerned citizens standing up and saying, we're not going to take this, we want to end the issues that we're facing with plastic pollution. And if you won't do it at the state level, New Jersey, then we're going to do it locally. And that really urged the legislation forward at the state level. going backwards just a little bit, again, I want to ask you to please send a quick email to Speaker Coughlin, ASM Coughlin at njledge.org, and ask him to put S864 up for a vote immediately. That would really help us move forward with this bill in New Jersey. We all know, and we've talked about what else we can do. You know, vote with your ballot, vote with your wallet, educate your community. The people on here today are not the ones that are littering. You're not the ones littering PPE, but we've seen that continuing to uptick, and that's really concerning to us. One of the other things that we're looking at working on is extended producer responsibility bills, and we've talked to Senator Smith about having a bill in New Jersey that we expect to come up to the Senate Environment Committee pretty soon. He's had it up for discussion once already, and that's S2515. And so that would mandate that plastic products in New Jersey have an increased recycled content. So it would be a market-driven force to try to provide some after-product use for all of the recycling that's happening. We know reusing is the best. We know refusing is one of the best options. But when you get to that recycling point, we need to start to create secondary markets for these products. They just simply don't exist at this point in time. And so S2515 would be an effort to move in that direction. I saw somebody in the comments saying we need a bottle bill. Yes, I completely agree with you. We also need a bottle bill. The bottle bill in New Jersey has gotten, oh God, it has gotten mired in so much political mud with everybody trying to grab up the funds. That every time it is introduced in the past, I would say 5 to 8 years, it tanks pretty quickly. We haven't put a lot of effort into that yet, just because the limits of the universe, you only have so many hours in the day, and we've chosen to move forward with S864, which would be the bans, and then we're looking at this extended producer responsibility as well. But we are looking down the barrel of a whole lot of money. We're talking about Koch brothers money, we're talking about oil and gas industry money. New Jersey is very, very important to them, and so they do not want this because it is a significant game changer to them. With that said, this is really all about individuals, and these are just a few of the individuals who worked on one of the bag bans up in North Jersey. And this has happened because citizens have gone to their councils and they've taken the ordinance, the draft ordinance we've put together, and said, we want to do this. And they were tenacious about it. And approximately 30 ordinances later, we got significant attention from the legislature to say, this is a real issue that we need to deal with. So with that, I'll stop, and hopefully I didn't bore you too much with all of my policy wonkiness.
That was not boring at all. I feel like that was really timely and appropriate, and I really appreciate sharing things that we can all take action on. And we'll include information about that legislation in the follow-up information for you all that are interested in calling or sending an email. And I think that segues really nicely into moving from more local legislation to federal legislation, which Shane will touch on, the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act.
Great, thank you. Let me try to enable my screen here. I'm going to try to scream through my presentation so we can get to some Q&A here soon. But just very briefly, my name is Shane Trim. I work with Congressman Alan Lowenthal. Alan Lowenthal represents a different Long Beach in California, Southern California. Him, along with Senator Udall from New Mexico, who introduced the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act earlier this year. Now, the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act is the most comprehensive plastic waste legislation ever introduced in Congress. And a big part of it was really inspired by the leadership and the work that so many local municipalities and states had really done up until this point, in large part due to the vacuum that the national government had created by its inaction. So a big part of what we wanted to do was to incorporate a lot of what we had seen that really works at the state and local level. That includes ban on plastic carryout bags with a 10-cent fee on other bags, and a ban on styrofoam or expanded polystyrene, ban on utensils, and making straws available upon request, very similar to what you'd heard as was going on in New Jersey there. Also, what you had seen and heard earlier was, you know, what actually happens to these materials that can be recycled or claimed to be recyclable, and what happens. And so even if you put it in a recycling bin, what largely ends up happening with those items is they were exported and go into the waste stream in other countries, or even worse, maybe even incinerated, or you know, gets just put in the waste stream here domestically. And as you heard, only about 2% of what you put in the recycling bin actually becomes recyclable. And so going from that linear model, we really wanted to create this circular model. And a big part of that, and what makes up the brunt of this legislation, is this idea of an extended producer responsibility, making the producers responsible for the end use of their product. And so that the financial incentive is on them. It's no longer on the taxpayers and the municipalities. And so instead of the marketing team being the ones designing these products, they're going to have to bring engineers involved so they can make sure that the materials that they're putting out there are actually going to be recyclable. So really, that was what makes up the majority of this legislation. We also implement a national container deposit system. I saw some people in the chat talking about how, you know, a lot of states need to implement these state bottle bills, and I absolutely agree. And so what we did is we followed some of the best practices we saw from states, implemented that nationally. We start with a 10-cent fee, but we allow states to go above and beyond that if they wanted to. We also put in post-consumer recycled content standards. Now, some of these are in keeping with what we've already seen industry promise that they'll do. However, what we do is really try to put their feet to the fire. We put it into the legislation to make sure that they are responsible for putting this recycled content back into the materials that they put in the marketplace. A big part of this legislation, it also deals with the environmental justice and human rights issues associated with plastic waste, and that includes the issues related to export. I think it was on Sunday in the front page in the New York Times, you saw that plastic producers are trying to export plastic waste to Kenya. You know, China's not taking it. Many countries in Southeast Asia don't want to take it anymore. And so they're plastics industry is trying to find another dumping ground for American plastics. Our bill would ban the export of plastic waste to any developing countries. And even with some of the countries that it still allows, it requires the country itself to approve that process. So it can't just be a company abroad saying, okay, we'll take that from you. We also put a pause on new plastic facilities. This is a huge environmental justice component of the bill. And what it does is it puts a study out there so we can fully comprehend the issues related to the plastic refining process. And it puts a pause on these new plastic facilities so that the EPA can update the Clean Water and Clean Air Act regulations to make sure that these facilities are not poisoning the communities around them. Other provisions include studies to try to address issues related to tobacco products and electronic cigarette cartridges, as well as fishing gear. Now, this process took more than a year for Senator Udall and Representative Lowenthal to put together. It was a very iterative process. We had public stakeholder engagement, and we're still having these conversations, still trying to update and make sure that this is a comprehensive collection of best practices and to make it meaningful to be able to address this issue. This is kind of a breakdown of what you can do. I will link to the current co-sponsors of the House and Senate legislation later on, and I'm happy to also provide some more summary documents so that you guys can see it a little bit later on. This is my email address. Feel free to send any questions my way, and happy to continue to have a conversation. And hopefully we have room for Q&A here. Sorry if I went really fast on that. I wanted to make sure we got through Q&A.
Thank you so much. I know with these virtual events, it's so hard to manage time, and there's so much to cover, especially with the issue of plastics. So, you know, we totally understand and appreciate all of you for being here. So now we're all back together in our Zoom room and ready for questions. Feel free to take yourself off mute if you would like to ask one. I have been going through the chat. I realized some people have been, some of the panelists have been answering questions in the chat, which is really great. Thank you for that. So should any of you have questions, feel free to take yourself off of mute and ask away. Yes, I see. Is it Sina?
Yeah. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I do have a question about the plastic bags. I don't have a problem going to the grocery store using, you know, my own fabric bag or whatever, or, you know, reusable. My issue is I live in a large apartment complex and everything is thrown down the chute, the incinerator chute. They do recycle downstairs in the basement, but as far as regular trash, it goes down the chute. And I use plastic bags to go throw it down the chute. I mean, they hold liquid, they hold, you know, everything that I need them to hold. I use them, you know, from the supermarket. If I don't have those plastic bags, I'm going to buy Hefty or Glad bags for my garbage to go down the chute. So I don't know, like, you know, and I live in a huge complex. There's a lot of buildings and, you know, and you know, even in the rest of New York, you look at Manhattan, you look at all these buildings, there's like, you know, thousands of people living in these apartments that are putting their garbage in plastic bags. So what's the answer? What do I, you know, how do I avoid that?
Yeah, that's a tough question, and it's one that we've dealt with a few times in a couple of different arenas. I don't have a sexy answer for you, but the reality is that, and I think I'm overestimating here, maybe Angela or someone else can correct me, it's less than 10% of single-use plastic bags. And again, I think it's significantly less than that, but less than 10% of single-use plastic bags in America have get a secondary use. So we hear from people who use it to clean their cat litter or their dog, pick up their dog poo, or use it for their bathroom trash can. And I get that, and I applaud those secondary uses. But there are very few people who do that. So the bulk majority of those bags go directly into the garbage, or if they're lucky, they get turned into a bench through some TerraCycle or some other initiative. So the answer is going to be, we're going to have to be creative and look at our single-use bags even more. So I have been looking at, I didn't realize how many bread bags I had getting from the bakery, and newspaper bags. So those are still in existence. Trying to think of other bags that I might have. But yes, there is likely an option that people who use those single-use bags will probably end up having to buy bags for those uses in some cases. But the idea is that, and the studies have shown, if I've got this correct, and Angela, please jump in if you've got better data here, that when you have to purchase something, you become even more careful with how much of it you're using and how you're discarding it. So you get some ownership over that.
Yeah, I don't have
feel
a problem.
bad for those
you know,
folks.
if I bring my own fabric bag, that's fine. But I need, I'm going to go and get, you know, the Hefty or the Glad to put my trash in down the chute. So, you know, and I know there are these fabric ones you can buy and all of that, but honestly, you know, they probably stink and I don't want to wash them every day. And, you know, and then I have to take the garbage out of it. You know, it's just, it doesn't, you know, I'm trying to be responsible, but it's very challenging.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Mm-hmm. So understanding that it is 7:30, if anyone is interested in maybe staying like a minute longer, I think a good closing question would be any reflections from our panelists on how you might recommend we either as a group here on this call or individually, how do we put pressure on those large producers? I definitely feel this as an individual and someone who does ocean advocacy and policy work. It almost, you know, those producers feel really hard to reach out to. I think the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act is a great way of getting at that, but how can we feel empowered, and what can we do as individuals or as this group to put that pressure on?
You know, and so much of this movement has come from the grassroots, and that's why you saw a lot of these leading efforts come from localities and states. And you'd be surprised how much writing to your member of Congress, writing to your local policymaker, but also letters to the editor, social media now, put pressure on these brands, do something to make it so that they see that the pressure's now on them, and really keep the conversation going that way. You know, an analogy that I kind of generally share is that the amount of input that you put into the process will result pretty equal to the output. So if you write a tweet to your member of Congress urging them to do something, you should expect about a tweet worth of response back. But if you get a collection of your community together and put a coordinated effort to do a letter writing campaign to your member of Congress, that's going to apply a little bit more pressure, and you can expect something more back. And that can be from your member, that can be from other public officials, that can be from brands as well.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Shane said. We had a great example in New Jersey. The plastic bag bill that I was talking about was stuck in Senate budget. You know, it was referred to budget because it had some budgetary implications, and it was firmly stuck. And there was a Girl Scout troop had been working on this issue for quite some time, and they helped to pass legislation or ordinances in his district. And so they started a tweeting campaign, and they were tweeting at him on the regular. And they had their whole troop, they had other troops, and then they had asked to schedule a meeting with him as well. And they were just simply relentless. And they got the meeting and asked me if I would join. They didn't need me. They went around and spoke to the senator and told him why this is important to him. And so those tweets did get attention, but it wasn't a tweet. It was a series of them, and phone calls to his office, and scheduled a meeting. And next thing you know, this thing broke loose of Senate budget, which I thought it was firmly stuck in. And now this gentleman is, he's very much with it. And I joke around and say, you know, he's for the plastic bag ban under penalty of Girl Scout, because they weren't going to let him forget that this was an incredibly important issue to his constituents. And they were coming of age. They were about 16 years old, and, you know, they have parents, and those parents are voting and paying attention to this issue.
Thank you guys so much. Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say, I'll talk as like a citizen, not as someone who works for a nonprofit or does science. It's hard. Like, I have 2 little kids. Telling them that we can't buy this brand because they are a bad plastic polluter doesn't fly sometimes. And we have to buy those little teeny tiny packs of cookies because that's what we eat, and we don't eat the big bag of cookies. We only eat the little bag of cookies. And so I'm a big proponent of every little bit helps. If you can write a letter, if you can vote, that's great. If you can't, and you can just bring a reusable grocery bag, that's even better. But, you know, the first thing is to get involved with something, because you're going to be more likely to stick with it and rally for it if you have a personal connection to it. Get out there and join a beach cleanup. Do beach sweeps or something. Get out there and watch these videos that are all over YouTube with us posting. Read a news article. Do one tweet to this senator. Whatever it is, every little bit that you can do is going to make a difference. You may not take down Exxon or Coca-Cola single-handedly, but it's going to lead to the next step, which will help someone else do that.
Great, thank you so much. And you know, just echoing all of that, if anyone is interested in getting a little bit more involved locally, or at the federal level, and you are not already involved with the American Littoral Society or the Healthy Oceans Coalition, we are very engaged both in the Mid-Atlantic and through the Healthy Oceans Coalition at the federal ocean and conservation policy levels. So littoralsociety.org and healthyoceanscoalition.org will include more information about how to get in touch with us and the panelists in the follow-up email. This is also being recorded, so if there is something that you enjoyed or missed or would like to go back and review, you'll have the opportunity to do so. And then again, for those of you that were unable to access the link to watch the story of plastic prior to this event, we're working with the staff, with the Story of Plastic staff, to extend our window of time where we can watch the film. So we will be in touch with all kinds of follow-up information for you all. But most importantly, I want to extend an ocean of gratitude. I cannot refuse or pass up an opportunity to say a stupid pun. But I'm just so grateful for everybody for taking the time to join us today. Our experts, our panelists, and all of you for this incredible discussion that we had. We look forward to staying in touch and working together to put the pressure on these polluters and stop this at the source. This is a really amazing event, and thank you again.
Thank you, Jenna. Thanks, Helen. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you to everybody. That was really great. And everyone, look for emails from us with some follow-up information and actions that you can take. And hopefully we will get together again real soon.
Great. Have a happy and safe Labor Day.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.